Welcome to episode 36 of the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast. Hi, I'm Jill. Welcome to our podcast for the Becoming Ellie community, where we focus on fitness, health, and food for women over 50.
And I'm Chris. If you're curious about the name Becoming Ellie, Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging. She and Thor were challenged to a wrestling match, and Ellie surprised everyone, including Thor, by winning. Jill and I decided that we wanted to be fit and strong too, like Ellie.
We also decided to share our fit and strong journey with you. The becomingellie.com website has a lot of free articles. We also started a private Facebook group where we share our accomplishments and ask each other for help.
If you go to the Becoming Ellie website, you can find some things to help you with your own journey to become fit and strong. We have some mantras to help you and an ebook of some of our favorite recipes. Feel free to explore the website and find a variety of resources.
Besides the website, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you at whatever social media place you prefer.
One of the things that we seem to talk a lot about at Becoming Ellie is healthy eating, weight loss, and maintaining weight. Today's guest should be able to help us learn a little bit more about this and help us to think of ourselves in a healthier way.
I'm really excited to have Erika Leon as our guest today. I met Erika in the same way that I've met many of the Becoming Ellie members. We were both members in a Facebook group, and that's how I became aware of Erika and her passion about healthy living and eating.
Erika Leon is the owner of Erika Leon Nutrition, an outplacement group nutrition practice in White Plains, New York. She helps people develop a positive relationship with food and works tirelessly to treat and prevent eating disorders and disordered eating in adults, adolescents, children, and families.
Erika creates a safe and nurturing environment for people to explore their attitudes about food, weight, and body image. She uses a non-diet, health at every size approach, which helps chronic dieters to discover their natural internal signals of hunger, fullness, and satisfaction.
I think you'll find this conversation to be helpful in your own personal journey towards being fit and strong. Here's our talk with Erika. Hi.
Hi there.
This is Jill.
Hi, Jill.
I'm so glad this all worked out.
Me too. This is Chris.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Erika, we're really interested in talking with you today because you have a very different way of looking at things.
This is my favorite topic to talk about. So I have an approach to overall health and well-being that is referred to as health at every size. And it is totally counterculture to what you would hear in society at large, what you would hear if you go into a doctor's office. We live in a very weight-centric world where there is this, and I'm going to call it a myth, but it's this assumption that you can actually tell what a person's health is like by looking at them, meaning that people in larger bodies, automatically, that means they're not healthy. People in smaller bodies, healthy and fit. We actually have study after study to show that you really can be, and I'm going to put this in quotations, healthy at any size, healthy at every size. And that overall statement really means that we don't just look at the number on the scale. And I think it is a lot of people a disservice. We need to look at behaviors. A person can be in a larger body and have very health-promoting behaviors such as physical activity, eating in a balanced way, having regular medical care, emotional well-being. I'm going back to this concept that not everyone in every body is quote-unquote healthy. Doctors do a lot of harm to people who come into them who may be in larger bodies and make them really feel bad about themselves. So that's really the reason that I've moved away from looking at health as just a number on the scale. I hope that makes sense.
Sure, because I think we all, whether ourselves or someone we know, have people who have health issues, and when they go to the doctor, or anyone feels free to say, well, you wouldn't have that problem if you just lost 50 pounds.
That is exactly what people hear. And people who, people who are in larger bodies, you can be sure that they've been hearing that forever. And each time that a doctor makes a comment about their weight, it's really what I call a microaggression. It's really something that's very stressful. Mm-hmm. And someone can go into the doctor. Let's say they're going in because they have a sore throat or they have a headache or even a broken ankle. The first thing the doctor is going to say is you need to lose weight. This actually can really create just terrible feelings of low self-esteem in someone. And really, I'm going to say this, actually malpractice. The doctor is not looking at what the person is there to have healed. And so I always encourage people to say, how would you treat this if I were in a smaller body? We live in this culture, it's called diet culture, where everyone is wanting to be in a smaller body. The fact is that we have human diversity. People come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, I'll just ask any of you, do you have friends and family members that are of all different sizes and shapes?
Well, sure. Yes. I've been all different sizes and shapes.
Yeah, me too.
There you go. There you go. It is really this fantasy of, I would say females, but males as well, that we should all shrink our bodies.
Well, how much of this do you think is fueled by the diet industry or the weight loss industry?
I think that it is all fueled by the diet industry. We actually have so many studies that show dieting just doesn't work. There are statistics that show that 95 to 97% of diets don't work. What happens is you can lose weight. Anyone can lose weight. It's easy to lose weight, but it's hard to keep the weight off. And that's why we talk about this diet industry, cycling machine. I almost call it the Oprah Winfrey effect. If you look at Oprah Winfrey, right. I actually worked at one point in my life on the Oprah Winfrey account, and she was doing OptiFast. Do you remember that?
Do, sure.
When she came with her wagon of fat across
1988.
the stage. Yes. Oh, my God. I can't believe that you remember that.
Well, I was just trying to lose the baby fat at that point. I think my son had just been born, so that date is kind of seared in my mind.
Wow. Can I just say that is amazing. I'm very impressed with that. But yeah, she just said, I've lost my weight. This is it. I'm going to keep it off. I mean, and look at her now. She's just been in and out of diets, she's been all different sizes and shapes. And now she has stock in Weight Watchers. So She hasn't lost the notion that you only can be happier if you're in a smaller body, which is really an unfortunate message, I think, because it makes people feel really, really bad about themselves. I mean, just, we sort of joke about it. I've been all different sizes and shapes, and, I have too. I've dieted my whole life. I grew up in a family that dieted. It's really what everyone did. It really does create harm. I'll say one of the biggest things that I see because of the work that I do is I see people with serious eating disorders. And disordered eating really stems from a desire to be a smaller size and shrink your body, and this chronic dieting. And it just leads to people becoming more obsessed with calories, with macros, with losing weight, and it becomes quite detrimental. It's really unfortunate how our diet culture does this to us.
So what made you want to become a nutritionist, and what led you into the intuitive eating, being a counselor? What's led you to where you are today?
Thank you for asking that. It's an interesting journey that I've had. I've been a dietitian, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but more than 35 years. And I started out as sort of a regular weight loss dietitian. That's what dietitians did and still do, is to give people diets to lose weight. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I did that for a while, and I just realized that people kept coming back. They kept coming back, and they might have lost weight, but they gained it all back. And so they wanted to go on another diet and another diet. And it sort of shifted into people then bringing in their, I'm going to put this in quotations because I hate the word, overweight. They started to bring in their overweight kids and family members. I realized, it took me a while, several years. I mean, I was at 10 years, 15 years, that I was really doing harm by giving these clients diets. I really looked for a different way, and I found this way of eating and being in the world called health at every size. The notion of the non-diet approach, which means instead of eating and behaving in a way where rigid rules are placed on you, which is what happens when you go on a diet. You have X amount of this, 4 ounces of this. Intuitive eating allows you to focus more on your bodily sensations, listening to what your body's telling you, whether you're hungry, whether you're full, whether you're satisfied. It's really the opposite of a diet. Instead of having external rules, it's moving more towards listening to what your body is telling you, which is really how we're born. We're born with the ability as babies to know when we're hungry, when we're tired, when we have to go to the bathroom. With living in diet culture, these signals are taken away from us because we're always on diets. And so it's really going back to being a human being and listening to what our body tells us. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this is true for many of us, is because we've done so much dieting or binging or whatever that most of us really don't even know how to tell really when we're hungry or when we're full. Sort of sad to say, but I think there are many of us that don't really know what that even feels like.
This is 100% true. I have clients that come to me who've been on diet after diet, years and years of, I'm calling it weight cycling, which, by the way, is very harmful to the body. With chronic dieting, you actually create inflammation in the body. So it's, believe it or not, it's better to have never dieted than to have weight cycled. And the fact is that you really do lose your ability to tell when you're hungry and when you're full because you're relying on these external rules.
Well, can you give us 3 or 4 examples of what you tell your clients that being hungry feels like? Do you coach them through that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm just going to say that the intuitive eating, even the word intuitive eating, first was developed by 2 dietitians, really revolutionary dietitians, Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, who came out with this concept of intuitive eating with 10 principles. They're not steps, they're principles to allow a person to sort of get back in touch with the sensations in their body, including hunger. Again, it goes through all these 10 principles of, rejecting diets, learning to honor your hunger, make peace with food. One of my favorite concepts is challenging the food police. Everyone that you talk to and are in conversations with will be talking about their diets. And if you notice if you choose not to participate in the diet talk, it's almost like you're not part of the conversation. Everyone's talking about keto this, whatever the latest diet du jour is. And if you're not talking about that.
It's kind of boring to just talk about normal balanced meals. Huh?
Yes. No. Honestly, it really is. But the first principle, and I think I'm going to talk about that first before I talk about hunger, if that's okay.
Sure.
It's the first principle is really letting go of the diet mentality, which is truly the hardest concept for anybody and everybody to accept. You mean I don't have to be on a diet? Like, you're telling me, I have people come in who've been just dietitian after dietitian, doctor after doctor. They've been weight shamed. They've been told that they don't belong in society. They're too big. They're too fat. And they come in thinking they're going to get a diet. And I say to them, let's just not think about a diet. Let's start with letting go and starting to appreciate what food feels like for you, what food you actually like. They don't even know what they like, whether, let alone whether they're hungry. I have people who come in and say to me, you mean I can eat a bagel? Like, I'm allowed to eat a bagel? And it's a line that I can actually remember recently. Someone said to me, of course you can eat a bagel. Of course, we talk about nutrition. That is, I'm a nutritionist, and we talk about eating in a healthy, balanced way. But that really needs to come at a later time after someone has really learned how to let go of dieting. Because, I'm just going to say, we talked about binging earlier. Dieting and restricting leads to binge behavior. And it's one of the reasons that diets just don't work. When you deprive yourself and you deprive yourself and you deprive yourself of something for so long, if you think about it, as soon as that something is presented to you, let's say you've been on a diet and all of a sudden you're presented with a plate of donuts or something else that's really appealing, it's very, very hard to not want to indulge in those. And that does lead to binge behavior, the restricting. That's kind of the first thing, as I say to people, is let's just not think about being on a diet. I'm telling you, a revolutionary concept that people just can't get. But I found it really saves people. It saves people emotionally. It helps people stop the binge restrict cycle. It helps people just really sort of be calm in their bodies. It's scary. I mean, if I said to either of you, you don't ever have to be on a diet again, sometimes it just strikes fear in the hearts and minds of people. Like, what? Crazy? But, I think our bodies are much wiser than we allow them to give them credit for. I'd invite each of you to think about when you started to recognize when you feel hungry, and do you recognize when you feel full? And do you know which foods feel most satisfying? It's something that I'm going to ask every listener to think about. I'm telling you, it's revolutionary.
Well, if I had to pick the most satisfying, it would be that first cup of coffee in the morning.
I have to agree with you.
Isn't that funny?
I'm still on mine. Yes. Yes. I would never tell anyone not to have their coffee. I totally agree. Unless they're obviously drinking 20 cups, and that might be a different story.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess anything to extreme, whether it's good for you or not, if it's extreme, it's maybe too much.
Absolutely. And I was thinking about that. I was listening to one of your podcast episodes last night. I was really enjoying listening to it because I admitted I hadn't heard of your podcast before. Mm-hmm. And I want everyone to know about it because you have really great information.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And particularly to our age group.
Right.
I almost feel like we've talked about, dieting, but like aging. It's another really scary.
Right.
Scary
right.
thing.
Well, it takes some adjusting to get used to the idea even. Everyone
Oh,
but
my
me,
goodness.
not me.
I honestly, I'm in shock at my age. I don't know. I'm really a little surprised. Like, how did I get to be? I'm 60, and like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
I just turned around and I got to be 60. And by the way, which feels different than 50 somehow.
Yes, it does.
It really does.
Well, I'm 62, so.
Yeah. But, I was thinking about just even the name of your podcast about strong, fit women, over 50, was I think that along with this notion of intuitive eating, I like to talk about intuitive movement as well, which is one of the principles of intuitive eating. I do have many clients, again, because I work with eating disorders, who come in to see me who have excessive exercise. And so I think it's really a matter of finding a balance.
Sure.
Because, people don't think about that as disordered eating, but it's a form of purging when a person exercises to excess. All of that, those are the kinds of clients that I work with, helping just people really live a balanced life. Mm-hmm. Finding ways to move that are really pleasurable instead of this is what I'm supposed to do. I know I'm supposed to do X amount of cardio and so many strength training episodes. And, not everybody likes doing that, actually. Some people prefer moving their body through yoga or gentle walking.
Right.
It's like I try to help people find what works for them.
Well, just simple walking is such an enjoyable activity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree. I used to be an aerobics instructor many, many years ago.
Okay.
And I loved doing that. I loved working out in the gym and teaching classes. But my fitness, the things that I noticed make me feel good have changed. They've shifted. I much prefer having a walk in nature than, and I don't really like to run anymore. I used to, but that hurts my knees. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important for us to be mindful of our bodies as we get older as well.
Sure. Well, no, but everybody's a little different. And, I know myself, I like different things at different times of year, different weather, just how I'm feeling.
Absolutely.
So it's nice to have kind of a whole choice, different foods, different exercise things, and even the word exercise sometimes turns people off, but sometimes I do like to go really hard with the exercise because I love the endorphins, but at the same time, I don't like to go so hard that I get hurt.
No, absolutely. I think that's really exactly what we're talking about, which is really listening to your body. Your body's wise. It gives you information if you listen to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love strength training as well, but sometimes I just feel like maybe I just want to be out in nature walking around. Or maybe I just want to go inward into my head and just do some yoga. So I think you're right. It's about listening to your body and doing what feels best in the moment. And that's really what I call it, mindful exercise, mindful movement. And sometimes people don't even like the word exercise. That freaks them out because exercise sometimes can be associated with, I'm doing this for the purposes of weight loss. So to reframe it and say that gentle movement is to make your body feel good, make your mind feel good. It's a very different experience. That's really, again, how I like to work with people is really help them listen to what their bodies are telling them. And it's hard.
Right. Getting the blood moving a little bit really is a satisfying activity. Whether it's moving a little bit or a lot of it, I don't know.
No, absolutely. And I think that I can tell when sometimes I'm sitting too much during my day. I have an office where I sit and I talk to my clients.
Sure.
And sometimes, honestly, I have to get up and walk around because I get creaky. Yep. And I don't think that ever used to happen, but it happens now. So again, that's really just starting to pay attention to your body and do any kind of movement because it feels good.
So do you encourage people to eat a certain way? You are a nutritionist, so I assume if you say to someone, all right, let's get rid of the diet idea, but do you also at some point say, maybe change your breakfast from Pop-Tart?
I'm going to say absolutely. Now, I want to just make the point that I work with so many different kinds of people. When I work with people with serious eating disorders, and I'm going to say that that's a very different situation where I have to really give people a meal plan and have them eat specific foods to become
Right.
healthy and safe. But when I'm working with someone who's been a chronic dieter, and really, I'm going to say might have some disordered eating just because of this yo-yo dieting, sometimes people really do need to have a plan to know what in the world am I supposed to eat? Like, I have no idea. Am I really allowed to eat a bagel? I mean, I wasn't joking about that.
Right.
We'll sort of sit down and together write up either a plan or ideas. I actually call it Nutrition 911, when you just can't figure out what you want to have. For example, for me, for breakfast, like if I just can't figure out, I know I can always have cereal and milk or toast with peanut butter, whatever it may be. So I help people try to think of balanced, I'm going to put quote unquote healthy meals at the same time to start to think about what foods they like, what foods feel satisfying, which foods hold them, and to really get away from just quote unquote diety foods. Some people may find that even though, I'm just going to say this, for example, salad might feel like a really, really healthy food.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been dieting forever, you may actually find that you don't even really like salads.
Right.
Maybe you really want to have a sandwich for lunch. I mean, I know this sounds very silly, but this is so basic.
Right.
And to allow people the opportunity to figure out if, for example, a sandwich might feel more satisfying than a salad. And this is kind of how I do it in my visits, is I allow people to explore their taste sensations, their hunger, their fullness. And the last principle of intuitive eating is gentle nutrition. Of course, I'm a nutritionist, and of course, the ultimate goal is to help people, be healthy in their bodies and eat foods that are nourishing and satisfying, but also health promoting. But I don't like demonizing foods. I think that, that Pop-Tart is a really great example. On an extreme, I have moms coming in, bringing their kids in to see me because they want to be healthy and balanced. And they freak out if their kid has like a Pop-Tart or something sweet or sugary, and like, bad mom, like you shouldn't do that. But the fact is, I try to really normalize all foods. And I'd like to help people, yes, have balanced diets, but also recognize that eating a Pop-Tart isn't the worst thing that could ever happen. It's not the devil. I mean, seriously, you would think that if I allow someone to eat a sugary cereal, that I'm like a terrible nutritionist. And the fact is that if you make foods off limits by not having anything that's kind of fun in the house, it really does lead to that deprivation mindset. And then, like kids, for example, will find those foods elsewhere, their friend's house, and so it's complicated. I think that each person is very unique. Each situation is unique, whether it's someone who's been a chronic dieter, we're trying to have them eat a quote unquote healthy, balanced diet and let them know that you really can eat certain foods. And when you've been on a diet for so long and you start to allow yourself to eat with a little more freedom, it's kind of normal to want to have those sugary sweet foods, I'm going to say almost in excess. And that's actually one of the scariest parts of intuitive eating, is allowing yourself to have the foods that you previously thought were forbidden.
So the pendulum kind of swings
Yes.
from not having any to maybe not having them in balance. But then how do you reassure your
Yes.
clients that it's going to go back to the middle, and the middle is where they should be? I mean,
Yes. Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I hate the word should. It makes sense that we should eat a certain way, but I want to make the point that I always tell people you have no moral obligation to be healthy. I know that sounds silly, but truthfully, you have no moral obligation to do anything for anybody, short of killing someone. I mean, you want, to try to say you're not a bad person if you eat donuts. You're not a bad person if you eat something really sugary. And when you've been dieting and restricting for so long, it's actually very normal and natural to seek out these sort of sweet, high carbohydrate foods, because your brain has been, you haven't allowed your brain to have these kinds of foods, and you really need this quick energy. And so I really do explain the process of this pendulum. It's a perfect example of how the pendulum swings from restriction to binging, and that if you just allow yourself some time and patience, and work with me, it's not an overnight process. It's not like a diet. It does take a while to really recognize that when you allow yourself all these things, eventually they will lose their power. It's called habituation. I want to give an example. If you ate pizza, if you had pizza every single night for dinner, every single night, 2 slices, 3 slices, whatever it is, after a while, I would imagine you would probably say, I think I had enough of the pizza. And that's called habituation. You just get used to something and it loses its power. And it's really the same thing with sweet foods or foods that have been restricted, that over time they lose their power over you. I have to constantly reassure my clients that this really does happen, that it really, be patient. It will truly, and your body will settle into a place where it's meant to be. rather than focusing on the scale. And that's scary and hard for people, but it's kind of the only way I found to be sane and have emotional and physical health, truly.
When you talk about emotional health, does the concept of self-care come into it?
Absolutely. I've heard the authors of intuitive eating talk about, there's these 10 principles, and that if they had an 11th principle, it would be self-care, which, it's kind of like my clients kind of look at me like, oh, it was a woohoo, self-care. But, it is so important to think about your mind and body, and being on a diet all the time and being obsessed with weight loss and, the pursuit of making your body smaller it's very stressful mentally. So I do talk a lot about self-care, and self-care doesn't have to be taking a bubble bath. It can be actually having downtime. It can be taking a rest day. It can really be anything. And self-care is something that so many of my clients haven't really thought of. They've put so many people first, their children, their families, their partners, and really not thinking about them and what would help them. It's almost kind of put the oxygen mask on for yourself first before you save your family.
Well, how does this apply to sort of mental? So if you begin to take care of yourself or to begin to wean yourself off the idea that you have to be a certain size or that you have to be eating a certain way or that you can't be eating certain things. So physically that you begin to probably have some change, but also how does that affect our mental state? I mean, I know you were just talking about the benefits of this for our mental care. How does that actually correlate?
I'm going to say when a person's just been chronically dieting, restricting their food, and they start to eat start this process of letting go of diets, I'm just going to say it can be scary because you may feel like you're eating more foods that you've forbidden in the past. So, your diet may be a little bit unbalanced. And your body does have some changes initially. If you've been restricting your body weight and suppressing it, our bodies are very, very wise, evolutionary wise. They really like to keep us alive. So when you suppress your body weight through dieting, restricting, your body holds on, it lowers its metabolism. And it really does that because it thinks that we're in a time of famine. And so when you do start to eat more foods, it's very, very natural and normal that you're going to gain body weight initially. And I always caution people, try not to be afraid of this. If you've been suppressing your weight, you're probably going to gain a little bit, but your weight will really normalize as you continue eating. I'm going to say quote unquote normally, right? I really encourage people to try to eat. I try to encourage like 3 meals a day, a couple of snacks to help people keep their blood sugars under control. I mean, I'm it kind of sounds like this intuitive eating. I was like a free for all. You just sort of, okay, no more diets. Like, oh my God, then what? And, I know. And I think that's a really scary thing for people. So I think that, working with someone like myself, someone who's an intuitive eating counselor who really understands that it's a process and to help guide someone through it is much more helpful, because I will encourage people to eat, again, but in a balanced way. I'll try to encourage them to have regular meals and snacks so that your blood sugar stays stabilized. And sort of upon that, you can then explore the foods that you enjoy, foods that you like, foods that you've deprived yourself of. And I really do mean it. After a while, a person goes back eventually to, I'm going to just say, quote unquote, whatever normal, more conscious eating. It is a process, and it can take a long time. If someone is really stuck in this diet mentality, it can take a while. It could take a year. It could take 2 years. So I think it's so different than dieting, which has a beginning and an end. I like to say this is really a way of being in the world, a way of listening to your body. It's just so different. It's about that pendulum swing, and then it comes back to the center of really feeling okay with making food choices that feel good in your body. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we have a listener or member of our community who we were talking about eating vegetables one day, and she said she really dislikes vegetables and she has a hard time eating them. And of course, most of us all think, well, we have to eat a lot of vegetables.
Which is okay if you like vegetables.
Well, yeah, which is great if you like vegetables. Yeah. So let's say someone comes into you and they say, you know what? I know I'm supposed to be eating vegetables and I really don't like them. What would you say to that person?
So, the way that we come into the world and experience things really has an effect on the foods that we like and don't like. And it's what I do with people is I really explore their relationship to food and to their bodies. And so, for example, what is it about vegetables that you don't like? Is it truly the taste? Is it an association that you have being put on a diet when you were younger? Is it a texture issue? So, I mean, I would explore those kinds of things with a person. And if they, obviously people just truly do not like the certain taste of food, I work with them to find alternatives. I mean, the nutrients that one would find in broccoli, for example, I would find alternatives, perhaps some fruits that might have certain vitamins and minerals that one would have in broccoli.
Right.
And it's working through the mental associations. It could be taste. It could be the texture. This whole range of normal eating where a person can want to eat a wide variety of foods, but then on the other hand, some people might be really picky eaters. I mean, because I work with people with eating disorders, there's something called picky eating. It's like extreme picky eating where someone really doesn't like a food and it becomes problematic. Their nutrition really does go downhill and we have to work on improving it. I basically really just try to hone in on what a person's relationship is to foods.
When you work with clients that are over 50, do you notice any differences between those clients and, let's say, the younger group?
Absolutely. Women over 50 that I've worked with really worry a lot about weight gain. And, sort of as we go through this perimenopause into menopause time of our lives, it's really hard to not gain weight. I think that is one of the really biggest things that I see is women getting so worried about this sort of expanding waistline. And I always tell them that, believe it or not, gaining some weight during this perimenopausal period into menopause is actually appropriate, helpful, important, because your body does change as we get older, and a little bit of extra body fat produces estrogen and helps our bodies to not have so many symptoms of menopause. So I really work a lot with accepting that our bodies are going to be changing and really trying to just be accepting of it. And also some of the people that I work with over 50 do have some more chronic illnesses than some of the younger people. The first thing I'm going to say that someone comes in, for example, I have someone I'm working with diabetes. The first thing a doctor will say is, well, you have to lose weight. You got to lose weight to get your blood sugar under control. I take a very different approach to just focusing on weight loss. I focus on the behaviors. Someone, for example, taking their blood sugar readings, seeing how the foods they eat affect their blood sugar, encouraging someone to do more physical activity, even though someone may be not liking that physical activity. And that's a very different way of being in the world other than just focusing on the scale. This thing that aging and women and what you hear in our culture is that we all need to keep our bodies like kind of the way that they were when we were in college or high school. And, our bodies.
That ain't happening.
It ain't happening. I know.
As they say, that ship has sailed.
That ship has certainly sailed. I mean, it's just true. Our bodies naturally change as we get older. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I hear. But I'm gaining weight. Okay, I just want to ask people to think about, is gaining weight like the most evil, horrible thing that could ever happen in the world? Like, is gaining a few pounds going to kill you? I mean, I'm actually really serious when I say that because that's the mindset of the people that I work with. Okay, maybe you were weight suppressed. Maybe you were dieting and your body was at a weight it wasn't supposed to be. I really try to neutralize the whole issue of weight and really trying to focus on helping your body be at its natural weight, which may be higher than someone really has initially thought about. Yeah.
So basically, you work with someone on intuitive eating, which means basically figuring out what you want to eat, when you want to eat, how much you want to eat. But you are actually doing a program called Health at Every Size. So you do ultimately have the emphasis on health. So, I mean, it's not just, well, I'm going to help people eat whatever they want. If I came to you and I said, my doctors told me I'm at risk of developing diabetes and I need to lose 20 pounds. We would go through your program. You would still help me address the diabetes or pre-diabetes or whatever, but in a different way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
My mission is to really break down diet culture and to help people realize we live in a culture that emphasizes one size. It's important to really have respect for the shape and size of your natural body, to try to be authentic. If we focus on just losing 20 pounds, it's going to make them potentially binge. So if someone comes to me with diabetes, I really try to help them, yes, let go of this crazy dieting mindset, but also, of course, we're going to address the diabetes. We're going to look at foods and how they affect blood sugar rather than just focusing on the weight. So it's a very different experience than someone just going to a dietitian and saying, okay, I have to lose 20 pounds. I'm just thinking about a particular someone I'm working with. I actually have a lot of people like this. This person came to me with diabetes, came to me with a history of emotional and binge eating. And she'd been yo-yo dieting her whole life and was in a larger body. We really focused on eating at regular intervals, eating balanced meals and finding meals that felt satisfying to this person. And that became very, very helpful to see, well, if I eat X, Y, and Z, this is what happens to my blood sugar. And as this woman normalized her eating and ate regular meals and really kind of focused in on how her blood sugar was doing, she did end up losing weight. And that was a byproduct of not binging, eating in a normal, balanced way. And her blood sugars improved. And her doctor said, oh, my God, you did so well. You lost weight. And she said, well, that wasn't the focus. My dietitian kept telling me that wasn't the focus. The focus was on I'm going to eat in a balanced way, want to encourage health promoting behaviors. It's not like I'm saying just eat whatever the heck you want. It's like right. It's sort of like dismantling and challenging diet culture and, not focusing on that, but really focusing on the whole body. I mean, I've come to this place after having been a regular dietitian. It's telling you it's a radical concept, but it works.
Do you have any tips for our listeners on who are trying to be their healthy selves?
Yes, I would really encourage your listeners to check out intuitive eating. There's a book and a workbook by, and I think I mentioned it, is these amazing dietitians, Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. And I had the good fortune to train with Evelyn. It's a really fascinating read. I really encourage people to pick up this amazing book. The health at every size concept is another one that I think is very interesting, that I think people might shift their perspective on what health means. The author at Health at Every Size is Linda Bacon. She's a dietitian as well as a psychologist, and she really is totally counterculture. She came up with this whole concept of being healthy no matter what your size is. And it's really about being respected in the world, and no matter what your body type is, dismantling this fat phobic world that we live in. Mm-hmm. Which makes us, honestly, it makes all of us feel terrible about ourselves. I hate to say it. Mm-hmm. So I know I'm not giving necessarily a quote unquote healthy living tip, but my healthy living tip is to focus on not just your physical health, but your emotional health as well. And I think intuitive eating and the concept of health at every size can really help people find those values, living a healthy life.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you. I think that will be quite interesting. I'm thinking about our mantras, Jill.
Yeah.
Erika, we have a group of mantras that we put together of ways to help eliminate some of the negative self-talk. And I bet you have some mantras too that you use in your work or with your clients. And can you think of a few that you might want to share with our listeners?
My number one mantra is I am fine just as I am. I don't need to please anybody. Mm-hmm. I am my own best friend. I believe in myself.
Yeah. Those are all good. And they sort of bring back one of the things that I notice this a lot on different Facebook groups and just in general is people say things about themselves that they would never say to another person.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yes. We are our own terrible self-critics. We are so mean to ourselves. I really encourage people, not just women, but everyone to really focus on self-compassion. Like the way that you would talk to a friend or your child. Some of the things that women say to themselves, like I don't even want to say them out loud. Like I can't believe how fat I am. Oh my God, look at these horrible thighs. I'm a disgusting person. All these really this negative self-talk. Having compassion for yourself, saying like, I'm doing fine, I'm doing well. Like if someone has a day, for example, where they just don't have the energy to do physical activity, I could just hear one of my clients saying, oh my God, I'm so lazy. I'm a lazy blankety blank. And it's like, well, hello, maybe your body's just tired. Maybe today what you really need is a rest day. Maybe today you need to be kind to yourself and think about if it was your best friend, what would you say? Would you say, oh, honey, it's really okay. Your body's tired. It's giving you information. When you feel better, maybe tomorrow or the next day, you'll go to the gym or something like that. Absolutely. The self-compassion is so important. You're right. Every single woman has this amazing negative self-talk.
Yeah.
we are our own worst critics.
We are. And that starts at a very young age, and it doesn't seem to ever go away.
It really does. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head what the percentage is, but something like, 40% of like between first and third grade girls want to lose weight already. They want to be on diets, or they're on diets. Like, where does that's our culture. Like, why do young children need to be worried about dieting? And that's the culture that we're being raised in. And that really does affect our negative self-talk. And where do they get it? They get it from their parents. They get it from commercials on television. It's just shocking. If our culture focused on the important values that we have, being a kind person, being a considerate person, being helpful to your fellow man, loving your neighbor, our world would be a better place, and we wouldn't just be focused on losing weight all the time.
That's true.
I know. It's why I always tell people to think about what your values are. What's important to you? How do you want to be in the world? Being a really kind, respectful person in the world, and not focusing on our weight.
I think we can all agree that being a kind and respectful person is important. And I just wanted to circle back and talk a little bit about how you work with your clients. So you have your clients focus on regular meals. You've said that a couple times. And regular meals, is that like 3 meals and 2 snacks? Is that what regular means?
Well, regular is different for everybody, obviously. When someone has been so dysregulated with not eating, people, honestly, they've come to me, they've been on keto, they've been on, Whole30, they've been on intermittent fasting. They actually don't have any idea what to eat. Like, can I really eat carbohydrates? And so I seriously do initially help people develop some sort of plan. And I say this sort of regular, I'm putting these all in quotations because it means different things to different people. But I try to help people connect with feelings of hunger and fullness by starting with regular balanced meals. Balanced meaning there are different nutrients, macronutrients in each meal. For example, it would have proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And I would sit down with someone and, really help them figure out what that feels like to them and how much they need to eat. That would be an initial way of working, is setting up 3 meals and 2 to 3 snacks, because when you're eating an amount that feels right for your body, generally within 3-4 hours, your blood sugar is going to drop and your body's going to tell you, okay, it's time for the next meal or snack.
Sure.
So that's how I help people establish regular hunger and fullness cues, because those, listening to your body, those sensations really can be lost with chronic dieting. So I help people establish those regular those patterns. And then, again, everyone is different. Some people really find that they do best eating just 3 meals a day, or some people need 6 small meals a day. Like, it's really very individual. And I really help people try to listen to themselves and eat in a way that feels the most satisfying. Mm-hmm. And also recognize that life happens, and that sometimes we make quote unquote mistakes in our eating, because that's normal. Like, sometimes we overeat because something tastes yummy. We go to a restaurant and we don't realize we get up from the table, we've had a belly full, and it's like, oh my God, like the world doesn't end because you just ate too much. But your body really tells you, okay, well, maybe the next day I notice I'm not as hungry. And so just sort of naturally, my body makes up for it. That's how I help people listen to their bodies. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's a process. So different than a diet, which has its time limited. It starts and it ends. But I want to make the one point, because I know you've both asked me several times, like, well, do I talk about nutrition? Like, where does that come in? And yes, it does. But it comes in more towards after someone has really let go of this whole notion of controlling their body weight. When you've let go of this diet culture and really started to respect your body and take care of it by nourishing it, take care of it by moving it, take care of it by getting preventive medical treatment. And then we talk about nutrition. But sort of the last principle, until someone feels that they're not on a diet anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, if you say we're not on a diet, but here's a list of foods to eat, and then you're basically giving them a diet.
No, exactly. And the fact is, we all have grown up in this world. We know what a healthy diet is. I can't find one person, if I sat them down, who wouldn't be able to tell me that fruits and vegetables are good for your body, or who wouldn't say it's like beans and tofu are really good for you. Maybe it's helpful to have a little bit less red meat. Every single person that I see can tell me that. the Mediterranean pattern of eating that encourages eating lots of fruits and vegetables, having certain oils that aren't high in saturated fats. It has healthy fats like nuts and avocados. I mean, I think that we all kind of know that this is a healthy, balanced way to eat. But my whole purpose is to help people not feel deprived and not feel like what they're eating is bad. This whole notion of good, bad foods. Like we talked earlier about those Pop-Tarts.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with having a Pop-Tart. If it's the only thing you eat, yes, it's problematic. And if you binge on Pop-Tarts and that's all you have, yes, it's problematic. But it's important to get back to recognizing that we can have balance in all areas of our life. And so what I just talked about with, this Mediterranean pattern of eating, yes, we know that's healthy. We know that's a good way to eat. Other people come to me, they're vegetarians. I mean, I want to be respectful of wherever a person is and help them come to a place where they feel that they're eating in a balanced, nourishing way and combine it with movement that feels good in their body. We as individuals have no moral obligation to eat in a healthy way. We have no moral obligation to exercise. It's our choice. And I want to make that really clear that I talk about this health at every size, like being quote unquote healthy. But, not everyone has the ability to be as healthy as they want to, even in terms of modifying physical activity. I work with a lot of people in larger bodies because I don't judge people. They come to me as they are. And to help someone in a larger body be more comfortable moving, there may have to be certain accommodations that are made, and they may feel uncomfortable going into a regular gym.
Right.
And so being respectful of that, being respectful of what someone's body is capable of doing, I think is really important and really affirming to create an environment that feels welcoming. And I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I sometimes feel very intimidated going to a gym these days. I don't like going to, where the guys are doing their like weightlifting. I feel very, even though I was a personal trainer, it's not an environment that I feel comfortable in. I actually much preferred working out when I was in a women's only gym. But I think each person finds what feels best for them. So I just want to make sure that we're not being ableist when we talk about being healthy or being physically active, that we have to help each person within their own individual capacity.
Right. Well, I know certainly when I go to the gym, and I like going to the gym, but I do occasionally run into someone who I feel is very patronizing to me or condescending because they see it like, oh, isn't this cute that this old lady is here doing this? Absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's so awful. It's horrible. I have a fantasy of mine one day, I say one day because I'm 60, but one day I want to have a gym that is really conducive to all bodies, that all bodies in all shapes and sizes feel safe and comfortable to work out in a way that feels good for them. And it's a challenge to create those kinds of spaces. They're not, regular gyms aren't particularly welcoming. Just even as what you're describing is this old lady, you shouldn't go and work out. It's like, of course you should be working out. How wonderful. Good for you.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So there is a question we ask all of our guests. So I'm just going to ask you, and that is, how do you define fit?
How do I define fit? What an interesting question. And I suppose I should have known you were going to ask me this question. How do I define being fit? Definitely in a different way than you probably describe it. Because being fit is moving in a way that feels best for your body and ultimately doing movement patterns that help you create a level of fitness that is just right for your body. Again, recognizing not everybody has access to gyms. Not everybody has access to fitness equipment. And so I consider someone who's fit, someone who's eating in a way that feels good and nourishing to their bodies, eating in a balanced way, and moving their bodies to the best of their abilities. That's how I would describe fitness.
Excellent.
Very different than what I used to describe as fitness when I was a personal trainer years ago. So my notion of what a healthy body can be like has really shifted. I think it's much more respectful to each individual human being instead of making a blanket statement.
Right.
So can I just say to both of you, thank you for being so open to hearing a different perspective, because I'm sure that what I've been talking about sounds like really crazy to some people and really radical, but it works. I'll just say it works. It makes people feel much better in their bodies and in their heads, which I think is all what we can all expect to hope for.
Well, we're all about learning and exploring different ways of understanding what healthy and fit and strong really means, because it's different than it was when we were younger, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Intuitive eating is something that I've never really tried because I don't know. I'm going to have to get my head around it.
It's okay.
Well, like when I think of intuitive eating, I think of eat whatever you want. And then that goes straight to, pizza, ice cream, all the goodies.
And I can say, absolutely.
And, that's something that, I don't know, I gained a lot of weight eating pizza and ice cream.
No, absolutely. It's a very scary idea. And I'll just...
And just not cooking for myself. And I guess that's the difference for me now as opposed to, when I first started what I call my healthy journey. When I turned 50, I decided it was time to pay attention to myself and lose weight. In my mind, that was probably number one. But over the years after I lost the weight was to become fit and strong, because I didn't want to just be thin, or I'm not even sure thin was part of it. But the whole intuitive eating, I don't know. I just haven't put my arms around it, and that's going to take. Do you have? You mentioned that book and the workbook. Do you do workshops and things like that too?
I do, because this is a process that is sounds so almost counterintuitive, but it's really not. It's really returning to balanced eating. And I do have an online program called Intuitive Eating Essentials, which takes a person through all of the principles of intuitive eating. It's got a combination of video recordings and worksheets, really asking people to sort of think about their histories of dieting. It also has a previously recorded live class showing and helping people learn to become intuitive eaters. I think it's a really good first step. It's a beginner type program. I have a website. It shows people how they can take the course online, and they also can work with me individually because it's hard to wrap your head around this.
Right. And what would you say the outcomes would be after taking the course? How would people's lives be different?
A person's going to be happier and healthier and feel more peace with food. Intuitive eating is really a lifesaver, actually. It really tries to help prevent people from becoming disordered in their food intake and in their body image. People who come to me with really serious eating disorders because they have just been dieting their whole lives. And for women in our age group, this whole notion of this, dieting, like not wanting to gain weight. Oh my God, I'm going through menopause. I'm gaining fat. It really can lead to some serious eating disorders. And we have statistics that like more than 14% of women over 50 have serious eating disorders. Anorexia, bulimia, binge eating. And these are the kinds of things that I see in my practice. I am going to give you the best example. Someone came to me who had a long time history of dieting, grew up in a diet home. Her mother's mantra was, you can never be too rich or too thin. And that was the attitude in the house. And so she grew up always thinking she had to suppress her weight. She was on the diet since she was like in third grade. And it really did change her life because she started to really think about her life, what was important to her, what her values were. She's actually in a much better place now through intuitive eating. It really became a journey of self-exploration. She became much, much happier in her everyday living. She found a way of exercising that feels joyful. She loves spinning. She loves swimming. She loves walking. Those physical activities became a different way of relating to her body. They became joyful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Well, if someone wanted to contact you, where would they go online?
They would go to www.erikaleon.com, www.erikaleon.com, and I have a contact page. They can shoot me an email, and that's how they reach me. I also have an Instagram. That's a great place to connect with me and really kind of read this anti-diet messaging.
Yeah, that's great.
We will put links to the website, to all your information in our show notes.
Okay, great.
And the book and the workbook and our webinars. Good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really very honored that you agreed to talk with me about this. Again, it's different than I'm sure any of the things that people have talked to you about in terms of fitness.
Well, we appreciate you agreeing to be on our show.
Thank you.
It's been very educational and given us a lot to think about. Thank you so much, Erika, for being on our show today. We really appreciate it. I think our listeners will have learned a lot.
Well, thank you so much, Jill and Chris. I really enjoyed being able to share a different perspective.
Yes, thank you so much. It's given us a lot to think about.
Great. You take care.
You too.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There was really a lot to think about of what Erika said, don't you think, Jill?
I'm going to have to try thinking about my food signals and when I eat and how full I am and when I'm actually hungry a little more closely, I think.
Yes, and I really liked what she had to say about intuitive eating and regular balanced meals. It's just got some different ways of looking at what's normal.
Right. An idea that you shouldn't wait to live your life until you're the perfect size is such a good advice. I mean, how many times do you hear, I'll do that when I weigh less or when I've lost some weight or whatever. And meanwhile, life goes by.
Right, right. And she had some really good ideas about examples of how people should look at taking care of themselves first. You know, the whole idea of putting on the oxygen mask on yourself first before you try to help other people.
Right.
It's really interesting.
It is. I learned a lot from listening to her today. So please feel free to share with us what you thought of this episode. We'd love to hear what you thought about some of the things that Erika said.
Yes, you can leave a comment on the Becoming Ellie website or our Facebook page.
Or you could join the Facebook group and talk with us there about it. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can do that wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, tell your friends about us and, if necessary, show them how to access podcasts.
Yes, did you know that you can now get to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast on Pandora?
That's cool.
Yeah, that makes it even easier to listen to us. We're now on both Spotify and Pandora, as well as Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and all the various other podcast apps.
Be sure to subscribe at our website for updates on all things Becoming Ellie. You can find lots of great information and things to download there.
Thanks for listening. Join us for the next episode of Fit Strong Women Over 50.
Yep. See you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.